Uh, Carolyn, thank you so much for joining us today. As we start, can you talk a little bit about your current role and what's in your purview?
Sure thing. So I am currently and let me try that again. So I am currently chief security advocate and CMO at a company called Cymulate, which is a cybersecurity company. And their legacy is in breach and attack simulation to validate security controls are working as they should.
I understand. And what departments, what functions within marketing kind of roll up to you?
Yeah, so pretty much the full gamut. So all of your brand awareness, your AR, PR functions, your demand generation, both event marketing as well as digital marketing programs, and also partner marketing. And partner marketing extends to not only our reseller partners, but our integration partners, our alliance partners, any and all partners, industry partners that would fall inside of that. And then I also have product marketing. Responsible for all of the content creation, messaging, analyst research reports, things like that. And then the other area, which is more commonly seen inside of marketing organizations, is the sales development representatives. And so I run our global SDR team with leaders in place both in North America and EMEA, who supports the rest of the world operations. So that's my remit.
It sounds like your days are pretty busy, I would imagine. There's a lot on your plate. And it's interesting that actually SDRs, sometimes we see SDRs rolling up to marketing, sometimes it's within sales. So it's interesting to see kind of different ways how this department is handled. So this actually definitely paints the picture and gives us a very good view of the point and the arc of your career. But to roll back the time a little bit, how did you get into cybersecurity marketing?
Yeah, so it's interesting. I've been in various sales and marketing roles throughout the years, and I think my first introduction to cybersecurity was a little company called Pix. It was a firewall company that got acquired by Cisco. And that was the first introduction of cybersecurity, which made sense, right? We started networking and connecting things. We needed to make sure those connections were secure. And then throughout my career at Juniper, they acquired a company called NetScreen. And so some work with the cybersecurity community there. And then my career's kind of gone back and forth between networking, storage, and then into cybersecurity again, probably about 10 years or so ago, came back into it, most notably at a company called Ativo Networks, which had cyber deception technology that evolved into identity security technologies. It was acquired by SentinelOne about a year and a half ago for a little over 600 million. So nice exit there. And then more recently, about a year at Cymulate, again, cybersecurity. So it's always great as you think about cyber. It's good to have a networking background because you understand what you're securing. But cybersecurity has to be the funnest of all of those different areas because you get to be one of the good guys, right? Yeah, you get to help people protect things. And I think even on the networking side, which is really important. But when I used to have to explain to my kids what I did at Cisco, I just kind of gave up and said, we make the internet run. It's all the networking, it's all the connection plumbing. And now it's easier because they get cybersecurity, and it's more of a household thing nowadays too, not just corporate networks, but we're all concerned about our personal security and information that is floating all over in digital form these days.
I think you're absolutely right, because it seems cybersecurity is taking so much more space in this psyche of everyone from consumers all the way to directors of the board, with whether it's SAC pushing companies to put board members with cybersecurity experience, or obviously, and I think to your point, it's reflective of a much bigger role that technology is playing in all our lives at a personal level, household level, country. It's really we're so dependent on all those devices and make sure that they run properly and we're not exposed. So I think as a result, so much more capital goes into the space, at least up till now. It seems every other day there was another company raising tens of millions of dollars. I think it's somewhat slowed down, it seems like, but in general, the space is definitely growing. And I think a lot more people are looking to make a career in cybersecurity marketing. So for someone who's maybe more earlier in their journey and more junior professionals or even maybe students in college looking at the space and thinking of making a career, from your vantage point, what would you recommend they focus on, the 2-3 things they should be paying attention or doing right now to set them up for success?
Yeah, I think the first thing is just have a love for technology, right? If you're one of those people, and I don't mean having a black thumb for IT, because I have a black thumb for IT, I like break everything, but just curiosity around why do things work or not work, and it's a good kind of characteristic to have as you think about this, because cybersecurity is changing. A lot of people think of it as oh, I've got to be this very gritty personality that goes home and plays Fortnite every night. And of course, people that are gamers make excellent cybersecurity people. But I would say you don't have to be necessarily of that ilk either. You can take a very technical background, right, in which you're working in a security operations standpoint. But as you go up, and as you mentioned before, cybersecurity has become a leadership and a board level discussion. And every company needs to protect its brand, and that involves making sure that their brand is protected. But also in a digital economy, everything is connected too. So if you're a business person, your interest in cybersecurity should also be high. And that creates a different opportunity for people, especially in the marketing discipline, that are really good at packaging things up and taking technical information and translating it into value and bringing it forward. And that does extend all the way up to that leadership discussion where most CEOs, board levels, especially of big Fortune type companies, they don't understand all of this, and they don't necessarily want to either, right? They just want to know, right? Are we secure, and how do you know? And we, in all facets, whether it's the guys that are running the security operations center or the folks that are building product marketing collateral or branding or PR or AR, there's so many different facets that you can be in cybersecurity. Is just kind of think about the discipline. What do you like to do? And I'm sure there's a way with the 4,000 plus cybersecurity companies that are out there for you to find a role in doing it with them. But I'd say just, don't be afraid of it. And especially if you come from a minority stance of being female or, a minority in some form, just go forward and try that. I think there's a lot of willingness, openness. We know we need diversity in this industry. So there are a lot of companies that have very specific programs too, to welcome both diversity, young grads, everybody into this field, because there is a massive shortage of skilled individuals that are out there. So it's a great field, and just find your space. But there's so many different types of roles you can participate in.
Absolutely. And it's to your point, what we're hearing often is that being curious and being passionate is important, because it's something, technology changes all the time, and just continue to double click, continue to dig, and continue to learn is important, because it's, in the end of the day, it's something, it needs to be a field that you need to be passionate for a long period of time, because it's ever evolving, ever changing, the opportunity is growing, but you need to be curious and interested, sustain this curiosity and sustain this interest over somewhat long period of time. So it's definitely, it makes a lot of sense. Switching gears a little bit, it's when you described all the different departments that report to you, it seems kind of you have a very wide spectrum of responsibilities, both on demand generation to demand harvesting on the SDR side. It seems every year or so there is a new theme that kind of wreaks havoc in everyone's mind. First, at one point, it was inbound that HubSpot pioneered, that everyone leaned into that, and soon realizing that only a fraction, 1-2% of the traffic converts. Then everyone decided to go, well, it's large scale events like RSA or Black Hat or Gartner, so we'll pay a couple $100,000 for a booth and a team, and we'll do the wine and cheese and that worked for a while. Then COVID hit. It was all about webinars, whatnot. I think now it's ChatGPT is just, it's like a forest fire. Everyone is talking about it. So, but so it's obviously kind of, there are different tools, and some of them may have application. But what is in your toolbox right now that's working for you?
Yeah, and you're right. There are so many disciplines, and the answer depends upon which one you're looking at. So let's kind of take it kind of the process flow of things. When I look at the world, I look at it and go, what do I need to do to get new inbound leads? What do I need to do to drive engagement? What do I need to do to drive pipeline acceleration? And what do I need to do for customers, right? So expand them, retention, et cetera. And each of those different things may require different tools, different performance metrics. But I think as you take a stand back and not get overwhelmed by the tools, I kind of joke around when I talk to folks because I'm selling the cybersecurity world, and they're like, we have so many vendors and so much of this. I'm like, have you tried like living in marketing and all the MarTech vendors that are out there? There are so many choices. And much like cybersecurity, we all start to sound the same. Like we're using all the same words and, all these growth initiatives and AB whatever. So you have to kind of take a step back and peel it apart in the way, if you're looking at what do you need for new customer acquisition, right? And you might start from standpoints of, well, I got to build some reputation and brand out there. So you have a PR agency and you've got a variety of different PR tools that you may use in order to find what journalists are interested in, respond to them, and get your name out in the media. You immediately need to have a website, because if you're trying to drive demand into your company and interest into your company, you've got to have a website, and then you've got to have the right content on your website. And then you may go, but nobody knows we're here. So now I got to go out and I've got to look at my search tools, and there are a variety of different search tools that you can help with. Google, obviously the Google Analytics and reporting that they have in there are very useful and effective to get in. You might look at other sources for driving traffic, right? LinkedIn tools, and there's a variety of prospecting and engagement tools that you may want to turn up there. And then you may want to look at, well, it's maybe not a tool for your company, but it's a relationship, and which vendors can you go to help drive high quality leads? Again, not necessarily a tool, but a thought process of, if you go out and you accept any lead from any vendor, you're not doing yourself any justice. Like, think about your filters. Who is your target market? And if you have an ideal customer profile, narrow down. And even if you have to pay a little bit more for the lead, it's much better than throwing away 90% of your leads because they gave you the stuff of anybody out there, right? You don't want the obvious, so no offense to you students, but I don't want to pay my demand gen money to students, but is it my target profile, my right titles, my right company, my right demographics, and making sure you have that. So then all of a sudden you start to bring all of this in and you go, now what do I do with these leads? So there's a variety of different marketing automation systems that are out there today that are kind of blurring with some of these ABM systems. So you used to go, hey, I wanted a HubSpot or a Marketo or a Loqua, that you wanted one of these type of companies to do your marketing automation. And now all of a sudden you've got like the demand bases and the 6 Sense and the others that are coming in, and they're all very expensive and they all require a lot of skills to be able to operate, but they do different things, right? And so really taking a look at your stack and deciding, how do you use maybe an ABM platform for intent and engagement? And how do you use a marketing automation for, again, scoring, nurturing, continuing to drive engagement? And so again, top of the waves here on things in technology. And I'm sure I'm forgetting things, especially if I go down the SDR path. I have a whole other set of things like outreach and sales loft and other things that help me call on those leads coming in. But I think those are a couple really front end things just on the lead engagement. How do I get the right leads coming in? And of course, you've got your event leads coming in as well. Well, how do I get these all together? How do I score them? How do I get the interesting ones to the salespeople? How do I warm them up on engagement? And then I'm going to go start looking at my activities for my setting my meetings, working with a tool like Salesforce from a CRM standpoint. And then understanding, how do I track performance along the way? Because there's so much that will get lost, right? To getting to that proof of value with the customer. That's a long journey, right? But how do you make sure you have the right performance reporting there to do things like that? And you could use things like Power BI. I use another company called Imperatives that does a lot of the marketing reporting. And so pick somebody that helps you find the visibility, because if you can't measure your performance, you can lose a lot of money.
Mhm.
And then, of course, that pipeline acceleration, which is kind of your later stage of, it's again, more content than tools, right? But you might have a CMS system or an LMS system, even for your partners as well, to get them trained and helping you with the pipeline and the transaction, other things. So I feel like I paraphrased probably what would be a whole training course in itself into a couple minutes there, but those are some of the things that I would think about and then report on, and then everything is outcomes and everything is performance management. So whatever you decide to invest your time or money on, just make sure you can measure, right? And don't be afraid of seeing the bad, because you go fix the bad, right? If you ignore the bad, it's going to come back and bite you later, but make sure you have the visibility to see it, understand it, fix it, and then make sure that those little things that are off don't mess up your data where you think, hey, things are either great or bad. But and I'll give you a quick example and then I'll stop, is just like, if you go, hey, I'm bringing in all this pipeline and all the pipelines retiring each quarter. Well, if it's all retiring into a closed one, that's great. If it's all retiring into a closed loss or no decision or disqualified, maybe not so great. So you got to be able to peel back a little bit to understand your business.
Absolutely. And what you said, it's so kind of the punchline is all those tools, they need to be stage specific, and you need to, if at each stage of the customer journey, whether it's upstream or whether it's at the bottom of the funnel, they need to be stage specific. And if you have specific objective and tracking mechanism in mind, so that you can pick the tools that work best and it can measure them and prove that they're worth the investment. And as you mentioned, a lot of them are expensive.
Yeah, and everybody will have a different choice. Like my choice for SDRs is different. They're like, I want a tool that gives me mobile phone numbers, or my marketing automation team goes, no, I want a tool that helps me make sure my email delivery is right. So it is very specific to what you're trying to do.
Well, but also I think it changes. It's very specific. Some companies addressing Fortune 500 needs. Other companies are after SMBs and mid-sized enterprises. Other companies are 100% channels. So it really depends, not just on the product, but on the persona, as you said, but also on the go-to-market and strategy and the way they do business. So it's very so many tools out there, but they're stage specific and also business model specific, I guess. I wanted to double click on something that you said about the 4,000 vendors that you mentioned. The messaging starting to blur a little bit, and companies are reaching for growth and starting to get their elbows out and kind of trying to encroach on their neighbor's territory, which makes it confusing, I guess, for the end decision maker, whether it's CISO, VP, or direct level cybersecurity executive. Where we talked a lot to executives on both on the sales side and on the marketing side of the business, and often the challenges that we see is really in kind of distinguishing and drawing that line between demand harvesting and demand generation. Well, we see that a lot of companies still invest very heavily in demand harvesting, whether it's 6 Sense or SDR teams. Unfortunately, oftentimes companies find that at any given point in time, only about 5 to 10% of your total addressable market will be showing intent. And when they do, things tend to be easy. They book demos, they're on your website downloading white papers. They show intent that then is captured by 6 Sense or Bombora or any other tool. Sales cycles are short, ROI is fairly obvious. So CFOs and the board, they tend to look kindly on those metrics. The problem is it's only 5 to 10%. So for a lot of companies, it's certainly not enough. And then, so when you look on the other side, on the 80, 90%, those are qualified potential clients, but they're so busy with problems other than the one that your product solves, and educating them, getting your unique story that's different, not just better than your competition or another company, but different. It's a challenge, but it's difficult to invest in those programs because sales cycles are long. They're very early in the customer journey. They're pre-intent, and measuring them. I mean, you had a conversation on January 1st. It may take a year for this conversation to become top of the funnel opportunity. How do you think about some of those challenges, and what would be your recommendation on how to align business objectives and budgets and kind of the go-to-market motion? Maybe it's too loaded of a question, but Maybe
No, it's a good question. I think I think you start with even the first one is try to have a conversation with people and go, what is the definition of a lead? Right. And you think it's so simple, but you start to go, well, is that really a lead, or is that a campaign engagement, or is it, something different? And so I think if you peel that back, what you do with a brand new first touch lead is going to be different than somebody that maybe is coming back to you and engaging in different ways, maybe at an event, a webinar, a website, whatever. And so patching those signals together is a different exercise than getting somebody for the first time that you're right. You don't know if you have a matching use case. You don't know if you've got alignment. You need to kind of warm them up. And it could be through your nurturing activity. It could be through your SDR activity to say, hey, come take a meeting with us and let me show you, especially in a startup world, because a lot of people don't even know what you do, right? And you've got to be able to get them on the phone to explain, and the conversation has to be super crisp, right? It's like, if you're going to take my time, you better tell me something in that 30, 60 seconds I'm going to give you to convince me that I want to spend more time with you, whether it's as simple as reading an email you're going to send me or getting on a call. So I think there's a lot of thought that needs to be given into, again, back to the intent of what do you want to do, because you don't want to miss out or lose focus on somebody that's building. Like, there's a lot of information gathering, and then there's teams, right? So I might ask a team member to go get me a piece of information. They're not really the decision maker, but maybe they are, right? Maybe they're somebody I completely trust and say, tell me what you recommend, and if it makes sense, I'm going to approve it. But you've got to have consideration to everybody in that buying group and look at them in aggregate. And it's one of the broken things of why the MQL is dead. The MQL is not dead, right? Because is it the MQL, the marketing qualified lead, or is it the marketing qualified account, right, that you want to look at? And so you need to, again, look at the behavior, the buyer's journey, and everything involved in it, and decide what are you going to do when. And then how do you decide whether you're having success? And I do agree with you about the inbounds. You're going to have a very small amount of inbounds that are people request a demo, request a lead. You've got great things from one-on-one meetings that you might have with event organizers, and you want to hold those with white glove treatment, right? Because they have expressed the highest level of interest, so don't lose those. But at the same time, there are sometimes I don't know that something exists, but if you can talk to a pain point of mine, I may not have the immediate budget, but I'll go find the budget, right? If it's something that I think is going to give me the ROI. So I guess it's just being tenacious and then knowing your customer, right? And not trying to throw everything against the wall, right? If you send me an email that's, and I joke around about it being my fist rule. If it's much longer than my fist, I'm not going to read it. I mean, some people even say the first 3 sentences, they're not going to read it. So how do you be super succinct and written in verbal form, right? And perfect that, right? So that if you do get them and it's leading the witness, right? So I start you off with something that might pique your curiosity. So if you know your customer, you'll know that they have a certain problem, right? So in cybersecurity, SOC operations and having too many false positives, too many alerts, not enough skill set is a problem. So if I call you up or send you something that says I have a SOC tool, you might go, I got a lot of those SOC tools. If I say I have a SOC tool that can drive your efficiency and these 3 ways, then I might hear you out because maybe one of those 3 ways resonate. And if none of those resonate, you could even probe, right? Is it a budget reason? Or is it just simply because you don't feel like it's a fit for your business? But whatever kind of thing to extract them and get them talking, then you'll be able to do more. And that's why I like the blend of the SDRs and the marketing teams together, is you share a lot of knowledge. And even if they don't report up to the same place, you share a lot of knowledge about what's going on. Does the messaging work? Does it not work? And then, like I said, plot that buyer's journey. So every engagement touch point along the way, see if you can create a cycle. Like, is there anything repeatable or noticeable? It's like, you know what, if I put this customer reference in at this point in time, I have a 25% better chance of closing the deal than if I don't put it in, or I put it in sometime later in the process.
Certainly. Well, it's to your example of SOC analysts and dashboards, instead of saying, hey, take a look at another tool, another dashboard for the practitioners to look at it. If you say, hey, you're probably looking at 25,000 alert messages in my dashboard, they're prioritized, and you'll focus on top 3 that are important and critical. So, I mean, if you stage specific, if you're thoughtful, to your point, and if you lead with value, then it's certainly, you're certainly more likely to get a response. And kind of going back to looking at account level activity and not just in an individual, there's so many instances when, you know, an intern would go to the website and download a white paper, and you may score this person as low, but maybe this intern is working on a project for a CISO who is actively deciding how to spend the budget. So you never really know. And unless you look at the account at 360 level and you take all different signals and you score them at account level, you may miss out on something like this. I know we're coming up on time, Carolyn, and thank you for being so generous with your time with us today. Last question. Imagine you have a crystal ball and you can see into the future, and then 6 months from now, 12 months from now, chief marketing officers of cybersecurity companies, startups, unicorns, majors will be obsessing, will be excited, will be concerned about what 2-3 things in your view?
Yeah, ChatGPT is going to rule the world.
That seems to be the consensus right now. It's yeah.
It's so scary, actually. I love the concept if you run it in the view of a pilot or like a very sophisticated search engine, but to make business decisions or think that ChatGPT can do your writing for you, it's very identifiable. And so I guess it's probably not a vision of what the future will look like. And it may be in 2-3 years, it'll be sophisticated enough it can do more writing, but it's missing the human. And it's very noticeable, that lack of ability to kind of rationalize things inside of ChatGPT. So I do think AI is going to continue to come. I think it's going to have a dramatic impact on technologies like search engine and the answers and the directions, and it will have to make us rethink a lot of our content when we live and breathe in the digital world. Like if the non-humans are starting to drive that, how do we appeal to that logic, right? And so that is going to have a different way of looking, and you can see it today. If you search in Google, you get one set of answers. If you search in Bing, you get a very different result, and even a packaging of the data. So what that will look like in 2 to 3 years will be interesting, but it'll definitely drive a change. I think the other thing that is, we get much better at looking at outcomes. We will get much more surgical about understanding our ideal customer profiles and how do we match the right use cases and messagings and drive relevance, because it is going to get harder and harder to reach people. And so, most of us don't answer our phones anymore, right? Even our personal phones, we don't answer them anymore because we just, unfortunately, don't have the time to take a lot of unsolicited activities. So we have to be prepared for a society that, as much as we want our guys outbounding and getting to things, we've got to warm up the world, right, around it. So we need to think about, what is the strategy in a world potentially where you couldn't reach a human, right? So how do you do this through all marketing engagement to a point to get them interested enough that they will talk to you? And then I think probably the third aspect of it is, again, back to the markets and the partners. Cycles are changing, especially around cybersecurity. A lot of folks are going, this is getting too hard, too complicated, don't have the DNA, can't hire the people. So as managed service providers come into the mix and play, as marketers, how do we change the way we approach, and in companies even, of how we go to market, understanding that a lot of these smaller businesses that still need this technology are not going to be buying it directly anymore. It's going to be through a managed service provider. So how do we absolutely enable that channel to be successful as well? So I could probably keep going on tips and tricks, but here's 3 takeaways that are things that at least I'm thinking about at this point in time.
That's excellent. That's excellent. So maybe we'll connect in 6 months, 12 months, and we'll compare. We'll take stock. But I think you're spot on with all those predictions. It's interesting that you mentioned that it will be much more difficult to reach humans, and they'll be shielded by, as AI will probably be used to generate content and outbound type of outreach. I think on the other side, AI will be used to filter some of those messages. So it's going to be like a battle of minds, so to speak.
It's a battle of ways, and then personal privacy is going to start to get in the way. If we start pummeling people with, AI generated stuff, if it doesn't meet the mark or whatever reason, it could drive the acceleration of privacy acts, which again, if we're not allowed to reach people till they opt in and you don't have a database, how do you get started, right? There's some kind of mind-bending things to think about some of those implications too. So yeah, we're in a interesting time in that next wave of digital evolution. So I'm looking forward to what that will look like, but also preparing kind of for the worst, right? What's as a marketer, what's your worst nightmare? Your worst nightmare is you're not allowed to outbound to people unless they've said yes to you already. It's like, oh, okay. Like now, how do I operate in that world?
Yeah, exactly. Well, Europe probably gives us a little bit of a glimpse of that, even though GDPR, I think it applies more to consumers, more so than businesses, but still, I think it's certainly a sign of things to come. Just to be, Carolyn, just to be conscious of your time, thank you so much for joining us today. Where can people find you? What's the best way to connect?
Yeah, LinkedIn is probably the best way to always reach out. I always think it's nice to have a note from people about why they're reaching out instead of just a invite to connect. It's like, tell me what you're interested in or looking for. Keep the human in it. We like engaging with humans, and so let us know versus just that pre-recorded message that they put out. But yeah, send me a note on LinkedIn. I'm always happy to connect with people. You can also follow. It's either way is fine, but yeah, love to keep in touch with folks.
Absolutely. Thank you so much.
All right. Thank you. Take care.